All right. So let's take a look at this because the question was, hey, I feel like I am drawing a lot to accomplish maybe a little. Is that what you're somewhat getting at? Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of cross sections, like you can see at the intersection after the start point that the 120 degrees to the left goes up 2.50.
Uh-huh.
And then so I did a line all the way across from left to right to match to potentially match the other two circles at the .50.
Right here.
Okay, yeah, so I was doing it across horizontally.
Uh-huh.
With a snap on in what's that called?
The
ortho.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was able to get it straight, but then I'm just finding that I'm drawing, after I placed that, then I went up the 1 inch, and I just kind of feel like, is there like a mirror? I do the whole left side. Is there a way to mirror?
There is a way to mirror it. Yes. Well, but the point of this one is to do a lot of drawing, right? To get you kind of used to the software. We don't know how to mirror yet, right? But there eventually we will get to the mirror command. We just don't know it yet. But the point of the exercise was to do quite a bit of drawing, essentially. Yeah. Okay. But I think what you were doing sounds kind of right. So you started here, and then you were like, well, were you saying you don't quite know how to draw this, and so you sort of lined it up with this, drew that over, and then you went around,
So to accomplish the 120 degrees, so I did the line command, and then when I did the line command, I used the annotation to get the 120 degrees. Can I just type in like at angle 120 degrees?
That's the question, right?
Right.
Okay, so this is tricky because it says it's it says it's 120 degrees, but is it actually 120 degrees? Does anybody have that answer? Right, so it's not going to be 120 degrees, maybe?
No, it is.
Is it 120?
Yeah.
You're right, yeah. Okay, so here, the other side would be opposite. Okay, so this one, if you think about it, so yeah, it's going to be, you're going to click here. This is going to be 0, right? And we're going to get 90 here. And then, yeah, that's 120 degrees, right? So in my mind, I'm looking at it, and then I kind of figure things out at first a little bit. And then I look at this angle, and I think, is that actually 150 degrees? Right? No. That one's going to be 0. Yeah, 180 plus whatever, 360 minus about 30 degrees actually, right? So 330. So if you're going in the positive direction, that'd be 330, right? So I kind of look at it. So I would start here, bless you. I would do 2.85 comma 2.25, and then I would do at 2.50 and the little angle, at an angle of 120, enter. And then I'd come up here, and I would just use direct entry. So I would move my cursor with the ortho on and type 1.00, enter. And then I would continue on, 1.75, 1.0. Oh, I get to this one. Okay, shoot. Well, in the positive direction, it's going to be 330 degrees. So I could type at, or in the negative direction, it's going to be, what is that? 30, negative 30 degrees, right? So I could type at 2.50 at an angle of negative 30 degrees. And then it would hopefully, right, if I typed it in right, bring me down to here. And then 0.5, and then I would go to 0.73, right? So I would get all of those done. And then you're right. So this right here, I would probably draw a line over like that, right? And then I would offset this line using the offset command over to here, 1.0, and then that somewhat helps me get these. I've got a 1.00, so that somewhat helps me get those. So, it sounds like you're getting there, and then you're like, oh, great, I have this whole entire side. I have to do the exact same thing, right? And I think it's correct to say, well, isn't there a better way in AutoCAD than just drawing it all again? And eventually we'll learn how to mirror things, but yeah, the intent is to draw the whole thing. So it sounds like you're going about it in the right way.
My problem was kind of minor slices a little bit. measurements on the square 2-inch circle in the middle,
Uh-huh.
from top to bottom of the rung there, or whatever you want to call that.
Uh-huh.
It's not, yes, it can be like centered and on point, but I just don't know the distance from
Mm-hmm.
the bottom of the circle to the top.
So what I would likely do is I would, since I started, I have measurements that go from here and then up and then all the way to there, right? I would draw this whole one side. So I have an end point there and I have an end point there. I would draw a line between there. And then I would snap using the midpoint snap to the center, and I would draw a 1-inch radius circle, which then is a 2-inch diameter. So it doesn't matter what that is, right? It's just whatever's left over. Yep. Perfect. Sounds good. No, you're good. It's good. Good questions, right? I'm sure somebody else had the same thing. So, any other questions on anything that anybody had? Good. Your assignments are looking good. I'm working through grading, so everything looks pretty darn good, which I think is great. Okay. Well, let's talk about today. We're going to talk about templates and creating a template, and we'll have an assignment on that. And we'll talk about LT scale, and we're going to talk about polylines and pedit today, actually, and join. So we have a couple of commands to talk about, and some settings we're going to talk about, and then the assignment. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on layers? Do layers make sense to everyone so far? Not terrible, right? Okay. All right, printing. Did everybody get the idea of printing? It's way easier than it used to be. It used to be so terrible.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I did notice when you change it to the DWG to PDF thing, it changes it from letter to like some other random odd thing that's still 8.5 by 11, but it's a weird name.
Right.
Why are they?
That's a good question. That's a good question. So one thing, let me open up plot boxes here. One thing about printers, let me do Control P again. So when I use the Adobe PDF, and that's what we have here at the college, and it's paid software, right, is that I get a specific set of sizes here, right? And they're kind of the generic arch sizes, okay? So this is called letter. Great. But when I'm at home and I haven't purchased the Adobe PDF software, I have DWG to PDF, okay? So I click on that, and when I do that, I get a whole gigantic list of a bunch of other sizes of sheets, right? Not to say that the Adobe PDF isn't capable of these, but this is just the list of kind of built-in sizes that you get with the DWG to PDF, essentially. There's not anything different other than they're called maybe something a little differently, right? We have the ISO sizes, we have the arch, right? Full bleed sizes, we have the ANSI sizes, and then we have the ISO, more arch. There's just a bunch, right? And you're like, well, okay, it said letter on the other one, but this one, 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 8.5, they're the identical, but why are they named differently? It's just because of the printer, essentially. So the printer defines all of these as being allowed for this setting.
Okay, so just as long as we have an 8.5 by 11, it doesn't really matter which one. Okay.
Right. And this has somewhat inherently built in, like we have a landscape, right? And it's 11 by 8.5. And this one also has built in the portrait, right? So 8.5 by 11. So it gives you the different rotation sizes, but they're the same. They're really the same. Good question. All right. Well, let's talk about, I think first, while we're fresh, right? Let's talk about some of our commands. And the first, there's 3 commands we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about polyline, pedit, and join. Well, and join is kind of inherent in pedit, okay? And then we're going to talk about LT scale, and then we'll talk about your template assignment, essentially, okay? So hopefully, I mean, sometimes I say this and we actually go longer, but I think today should be a little bit calmer day than we've had so far. I feel like our lectures have been very long for the past couple weeks, and I think this one we'll be able to take it down a little bit. All right, so some more drawing commands. All right, I'm going to go back to my home tab over here in AutoCAD, and we're going to talk about polylines, and we're going to talk about the pedit command. All right, And I think the best way to kind of illustrate how this command can benefit you is to use the basketball court as an example, right? So when we drew the basketball court, I'm going to make sure we are in architectural units. When we drew the basketball court, right, the first time that I drew it, I came up here to the line command, and I drew it, what are the dimensions? 56, okay, 56 foot. 56 foot, right, and, oops, I'm going to escape, oop, there we go, 56 by 96, oop, 96 foot, not 96 inches, there we go. So here's our basketball court, right? And I drew that, and then I thought part of this assignment was to offset those lines to create the inner court boundaries, right? So if I offset those lines 36 inches, then, you know, and I ended up doing this again because as I offset it, I noticed that I have kind of this little area that needs some cleanup, right? Those are crossing and they shouldn't be. And at this point in time, we know some tools, but we don't know them all. And so if I were to draw this like this at your stage, I wouldn't know how to clean it up, okay? And so I said, well, you know what we're going to do instead? We are going to use the, let's use the rectangle command. And I'm going to click and I'm going to type at 56 foot, comma, 96 foot, relative coordinates, right? And, oh, I got it, oh, I did it wrong, sorry. Shouldn't have done that. I'll rotate it. But there's my basketball court. And, you know, I like this geometry a little bit better because when I offset it, all of those pieces of that rectangle are kind of glued together. They're all one continuous piece, right? Instead of being 4 individual line segments. And what's nice about that is when I offset it, it offsets the entire object, right? So I don't get these little pieces that I have to clean up like I would with the line command. The reason that this worked this way is because this is essentially a polygon, right? And that's why all of the lines are glued together. They're one piece, and when I offset it, they all offset as one piece. Yep.
What was your shortcut to rotate?
RO. Yep, RO, enter. Yep. I think the nice thing about AutoCAD now is that if you start typing the command, it will predictive text, and it will give you the full command and the shortcut command at the command line. And then you'll start getting really geeky when you use AutoCAD a lot, and you'll customize your commands so that you only use your left hand to type and your right hand to mouse, and there's no moving of hands when you, right? You guys will get there. All right, so that's great. But there's got to be some way that, number one, we can use the line command to draw continuous line segments, or there's got to be some way where we can go in after the fact, after we draw individual line segments, and kind of join or glue them all together so they're one piece, okay? And there is, and it's the polyline command, okay? The polyline command functions exactly like the line command. So from the initiation of the line command to the definition of, you know, the lengths to what you type in, everything from the polyline command to the line command, everything's identical, right? So if I were to delete, well, I'll leave those there. If I were to use the polyline command to draw this basketball court, I would still draw 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. But using the polyline command, it would be one continuous line segment, all right? So if we come up here to polyline on the home tab under the draw menu, right? A 2D polyline is a connected sequence of segments, line segments, I guess, created as a single planar object, right? So it's the line command, but all of the lines, instead of being somewhat individual, like you can select them individually, they're all glued into one piece. Right? That's the polyline command, okay? So to initiate the polyline command, I'm going to click on it, or I can PL polyline at the command line, enter. I'm going to click in model space, and I'm going to move in the direction I want to go and type a dimension. 96 foot, enter. 36 foot, enter. 10 foot, enter. 15 foot, enter. I'm going to come over here, right? I'm even using the same object snaps. Click. And you're going to notice we have a little kind of cross symbol here, a little plus sign, right? That's indicating where that polyline has begun, where it started. That's its start point. And as I finish, and I don't have to create a closed region to finish, but I am in this case, I come up to where I started, I click and I get my endpoint snap to engage, and I hit escape. Now by doing that, when I hover over that line, all of those line segments, and I click, you'll notice that I click one time and it selects all of them, right? And so they're all one continuous piece, right? Which is helpful when I use the offset command as my next modification command. Offset, 1 foot, enter, click, click, right? And I can continue, click, click, click. Oop, come on, there we go, click, 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 right? And I don't get all of that terrible cleanup in the corners that I would have with the regular line segment, okay? Yep.
You typically, I know we haven't gotten into trim on the names, but can you do trim on AutoCAD too? Or trim the corners?
Trim,
Like if
oh yeah, yeah, so if it extends past, you can trim them off, or if they don't quite meet, you can trim them off. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. Yep, and we'll get there soon, I promise. So this is a really great solution, right? A great solution for things that are not quite as simple as just a 4-sided polygon like a rectangle, right? If that basketball court had been any other custom shape, you all would have kind of been out of luck having, you know, trying to offset it in and make it look the way that it needed to with the skill set that you had, okay? So polylines again, I'm going to come up here, click on the polyline command. I'm going to click, I'm going to turn my ortho off, click, 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 escape. And if I hover over that, there they all are, okay? So when you're first using AutoCAD, you're like, hey, polyline is fantastic. I'm only going to use polyline, right? Why would I use line when I can use polyline and have everything connected, right? And it's great. I think that when you are a beginning student, polyline is a pretty good tool to use. But it's one of those tools where I kind of pick and choose now that I've been doing it for a long time where I'm going to use it exactly, right? Because there are going to be times where maybe I don't want to offset every line in my floor plan. Maybe I want to only do 2. And if it's a polyline, then it offsets everything, right? So you'll get a pretty good sense of when you start working with AutoCAD for a little bit longer, when a polyline is going to be appropriate and when it's not, okay? But for our purposes right now, it's great because I could come in and I could PL, enter, polyline, and you could come in and draw a house plan. Turn my ortho on, you know, it somewhat looks like this, great. Maybe it's not a house plan. It's a fun house plan, right? And that looks great. Now I have those exterior walls that I want to offset. So I'm going to offset, you know, let's say 3 inches, enter, because there's stone on the outside. And then offset, enter, you know, I won't go through all the layers, but maybe there's a stud right behind it. 3.5 inches. And you can start offsetting the wall assembly, right, to get what the wall thicknesses are going to be. So it's really helpful for doing those kinds of things. Polylines, I would say the #1 top use for me using a polyline is for tracing things, honestly. You're going to find when you start working professionally, yep.
So that polyline could potentially be a problem on a house when you got to add doors and windows and all that, right? Right,
yeah, because you're gonna have to break the polyline kind of to put the doors and windows in. So what's the point of the polyline, right? Yeah. So, oh boy, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, it was a good question. It was a good question. Where was I headed with this? Oh, well, anyway, it'll come back to me. So we have these polylines, right? And they're tracing. I was saying we trace with them. So the biggest use for me for polylines is tracing, right? A big portion of a lot of design professionals' jobs, and I include engineers in this because you'll get the same type of information that the rest of the design team gets, is as-built generation, right? So your client comes to you and they say, hey, we have this project and we want to remodel it, or the existing project is going to be completely demoed, leveled to the ground, and then we're going to build new, right? So regardless of what discipline you're in, you're likely going to get, well, hopefully now we have enough digital drawings out there to get a digital file of the original building, right? But if not, somebody will give you a blueprint, you know, from 1974, and you'll have to scan them in. You'll have to bring the image into AutoCAD and then trace over the top of the original drawings, right? So if you're doing a remodel, you will have those original drawings. You'll have them, you will have traced the original blueprint, so you hopefully they're pretty accurate. So you know it's there. You know that when you're remodeling and designing that the information you have is fairly correct, right? So the new design will be pretty accurate. So polylines in tracing those kinds of things are really great. It's super easy to use. It's continuous. It's clean, right? And I use it all the time for that. I don't tend to use it a whole lot in drawing like brand new floor plans, only because I feel like I like to have the control that a single line segment provides me, right? So
Once it is a poly, can you break it?
you can, yes. So if you're unsure, right, and you're like, hey, I want to draw this polyline, but I don't want to quite commit. I want the option to break it if necessary. We can explode them. So I've drawn this polyline. Okay. If I want to explode the polyline, I would come up. Oh, there it is, right there. This is the explode command. The explode command will take any object that I would say any object in AutoCAD really, and if it's more than one piece, explode will break it apart into its component parts. Okay, so things like, and you don't know what these are yet, but things like blocks or hatch and poche, polylines, different things like that that are inherently kind of glued together, you can explode them and break them apart into their component pieces with explode. So explode is very easy to use. I'm going to click on explode. Down at the command line it says select your objects. All right, my polyline, click. I'm going to hit enter. And by doing that, now that polyline has been broken into its individual component parts. Yep. So you can commit to the polyline, and then in the future you can break it. Yep.
Can you do it the other way?
Yes, you can. Yes. So that's the next command, right? Pedit, which is inherently a join command for polylines. So you can draw polylines, you can explode them, and then you can join them back together if needs be. You can also take a set of individual lines and you can draw them and then change them into a polyline. Okay. The only kind of catch with taking lines and changing them into a polyline is they have to be touching, right? So I can't say, for example, draw a bunch of weird line segments like this, right, and join them together. But I could take this line, you know, this line that I'm drawing that is all individual line segments, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could take all of those, and because I had used my endpoint snap to make sure that the endpoints are touching, I could take these and join them into a polyline after the fact. Okay, so we can take the polyline, use the explode command, explode it into its component parts. Then I can use the pedit command to join it back together. Okay, and I can take individual line segments and also join those together, even though they were never originally a polyline, and I'd make them a polyline. All right. So the pedit command, where is the pedit command? There is, yeah, you can type pedit. There is one. Let's see if we can find it. I never use the icon. That's a good question. So let's go to pedit. Ah, see, it doesn't even look like pedit. Find. Oh. Oh, let's see.
Could you just type in pedit at the bottom?
Yes, you can. Yep, absolutely. It's odd though. I don't see where it says it's.
Just above modify.
Oh,
It's when you click on modify, it's the top one.
there we go. That little guy right there. Okay. See how often I use it, right? All right. So we have our little pedit, our edit polyline command right there. But you can also just type pedit at the command line and hit enter. And here's the thing about the pedit command. It's not difficult, but it's a long command, okay? So there's a lot of steps in it, and if you don't follow them, then the polyline won't join together correctly. All right, so let's go through the pedit command, and I'm going to join together these line segments that I created. So these were individual lines that I drew. Their vertices or endpoints here are touching, so I'm going to join them into a polyline. So I'm going to type pedit, enter, and down here it says select a polyline or multiple. So I'm going to click on multiple, and it says select your objects. So I'm just going to grab them all at one time. I could also use a blue window or a pick, right? And when I'm done selecting, I have to tell AutoCAD I'm done selecting. So I hit enter. And it says, would you like to convert lines, arcs, and splines to a polyline? So I can click on yes, or I could type Y, enter. And now it says enter an option. What would you like to do with this polyline? Because within the pedit command, it doesn't just allow you to join lines. It allows you to, bless you, allows you to join lines, close lines, open lines, fit lines, spline lines, decurve lines, right? There's a lot of different things you can do with the polyline to edit it. So in this case, what we want to do is join the polyline. So I click on join. Oops. Another option, enter the join type. Okay, so I'm just going to hit it, enter. Enter a fuzz distance, enter. And it doesn't look like a whole lot happened through all those 6 or 7 different steps, right? But it says 4 segments were added to the polyline. So I can come up here now, click on it, and it's a polyline, where before it was 4 individual line segments. Okay. So let's do that again. I'm going to explode that object. Click, select, enter. That's my explode. And now this is back into line pieces. Escape, escape. I'm going to pedit, enter. M for multiple, or click on multiple. And I'm going to select all my objects, enter. Convert lines, arcs, and splines to a polyline. Yes, enter. We want to join our polyline. Click. I'm going to hit enter for our fuzz distance, enter. And it's almost like it wants to continue. It's like, hey, okay, that's great. We just joined it together. What would you like to do next, right? But we're done, so we don't want to do anything. So you can hit escape, but I do know this was successful because it says 4 lines or 4 segments were added to the polyline. Yeah, the line segments. So those were individual line segments. And then when we joined them, they became a polyline.
There's 5, right?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, maybe they're just not counting. One was or maybe an original. Yeah. Yep. Good point. Good point. Sometimes, but sometimes I was just going to say, you get like, hey, 3 lines were added to the polyline. You're like, there's like 10 right there. And at times, not all of them will join together, and it could be because there's a tiny little gap between 2 elements, right? Some things are not quite touching. That's the most common reason things won't join together. So you just want to watch and pay attention to what's happening. All right, so I have this down here. I broke it up. I exploded it into pieces. So I'm going to pedit that one. Pedit, enter. And for multiple, enter. Select all my objects, right? I can do it in a couple of different selections. Enter. Convert them to polyline, yes. Click. Join, click. Enter. And it says 9 segments were added to the polyline. So I hit escape. I click on it, and I can see that all of those lines were added. There's no real limit on polylines. So if you wanted to explode that and polyline it, great. If you wanted to explode it, add another line segment, and then re-polyline it, great. You can continue to explode and re-edit as many times as you need to. But I will say that while this modification is pretty successful 99.9% of the time, right? I feel like in my experience, it's always just still somewhat better to draw. If you want a polyline, right, draw the original object as a polyline, right? It'll have more integrity than if you go back and you draw something and then pedit it, right? Not to say it won't work, but you won't have any problems with the original if it's a polyline, right? Like, hey, one segment was left out, and you're like, well, why was it left out? I don't understand. And you know, then you get like maybe into a tight little corner here, and maybe there was a teeny little gap that you can't really perceive, right? So from back here, you're like, why didn't that join? I don't understand. It looks pretty good, you know? And then you start troubleshooting. You zoom in here and you're like, oh, there's a tiny little gap that I didn't even notice, right? So again, in my experience, if you want a polyline, just draw it that way in the first place. Pedit is kind of a afterthought, okay? I want to show you a couple of options within polyline, and there's one kind of limitation I want to talk about, okay? So we'll come back. The limitation is down here, but we'll come back to that. So within the polyline command, you have a lot of different options you can choose for the polyline. So if I do PL, enter polyline, I click and start my point, you're going to notice that we have a few different options down here, okay? And I'm going to talk about 3 of them. We're going to talk about arc, undo, and width, okay? So I'm clicking around and I'm drawing. I'm moving in the direction I want to go, and I type 2 foot, enter. You know, it's dimensional. I can use all my object snaps, which is great. And then I get to, you know, maybe I'm tracing a set of drawings and there's like a curved portion of it. Well, the really valuable thing about a polyline is that I can change what I'm drawing in the middle of it. And what that means is if I come down here to arc and I click on arc, click, my polyline starts to function like an arc, right? Which is really nice, okay? And I'm doing it, I'm exaggerating this, of course, right? So I'm gonna go back to line. I come down here, L for line. I draw a little bit more line, right? I'm exaggerating it, but it is actually pretty useful because I can somewhat make like a gentle arc and follow the lines of a building if I need to, right? Those of you that are going into civil engineering, drawing curb cuts and all that good stuff, right? This is a perfect tool for that, right? And the lines are all glued together. So I can come back here and I can go to line, click, and on I go, all right? Because polyline is a continuous command and because it's all glued together, what is really nice about it is that you're able to undo a line segment if you accidentally draw incorrectly, right? So you're going along, you've got about 50 line segments and you're on the last one and you draw it wrong. And you're like, oh my gosh, great. I did this whole polyline and now the last segment is not going to be connected to it, or I have to p-edit it because I typed in the wrong dimension, right? Well, we have the option to undo a move within the polyline command. So that last line segment, if it's wrong, undo, undo, undo. And then I can go back and continue on with what I was doing, right? Obviously took me back into the arc command. I also have a width factor here that I can use, right? And the width factor, if I click on width, it will say, what width would you like? And I could say something like 6 inches, enter. 6 inches, enter. There's 2. There's a beginning and an end width. And my line will then have a width associated with it. So if you are working on a set of drawings or a site plan or anything, and somebody says, hey, can you do a quick area takeoff for me? You're like, yeah, sure. You know, sometimes it's helpful to have a thicker line maybe around areas that you're doing takeoffs so that somebody can very visually say, I took that area, I took that area, I took that area, right? And you can sort of outline them with a thicker outline to identify them. Okay, I can come down here, I can go back to width, click, right? And the nice thing about this is that I can come down here and click. I'm going to go back to the original thickness of this line, which is 0. Our lines that we draw in here have a 0 width associated with them. So 0, enter, 0, enter, and I'm back to my lines. Okay.
Question. So if you did the beginning width of like 6 inches and the end width of 0, it would be like a...
Yes, like an arrow shaped. Yeah, narrow at the one end and thick at the other end. Yep. Do any of you use SketchUp in here? Not yet, right? You will, trust me. SketchUp is a free software and it allows you to do massing very quickly. And what's really nice about SketchUp is that you can import CAD files into SketchUp. So if you want to show a client some quick massing on a project you're working on, and I say massing as in architectural massing, but if you're a civil engineer and you want to show the client what the topography of their site looks like, there's a site tool in SketchUp. And it will just lay like a a little surface over the top of topo lines and give you a beautiful looking 3D, you know, site. But what's really great about AutoCAD going into SketchUp is that if you use these thick lines, these polylines, they import into SketchUp as regions that you can just pull up very quickly, which if you haven't used it doesn't sound that helpful, but if you have used it, it's helpful, right? So that's one good use for this as well. All right, so one thing I want you to notice, I think I was going to say this, I don't think I said it, is that when you're working through this polyline command, right, if I come down here and I change the options, it doesn't break the command, right? So whether I come down here and I type arc, you know, click, 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 I can come down here and click on line, or I could type L, enter, right? Click, 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 A, enter, arc, click, 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 L, enter, line, click, click, click. But the point is that I can create arced lines, I can create thick lines, I can create thin lines, and they can all be kind of glued together. And the final thing I want to show you with regards to polyline is that we can close a polyline, a region within a polyline, which means that wherever you are, right, so I'm right here, wherever I am, if I click on the close command, click, oh, there we go. Do you see how it took my last line segment and just automatically closed it at the beginning? Okay, so we can do that as well. So again, polyline it's really, really useful. I use it actually quite a bit. There is one limitation to polylines, and this will come a little bit later when we talk about the fillet command. But I just want to give you a little warning on it in case you know, run into this. If I draw two lines, here's one line, and I'm using the line command, and I offset that line 6 inches, oh, I forget we're in decimal. We'll do it 1 increment, just like the example below. Great. There's a command that's called fillet, and I'm not going to show you how it works other than to say if I fillet 2 lines with a radius that is the distance they are apart, I get a rounded edge, right? Let me do that again. Great. Okay, we don't know how to do fillet, but I would just want to show you this. If I, oh, did you have a question? No? It's F for fillet, yep. But you have to enter a radius, so it gets a little bit further than that. If I draw 2 polylines, PL, enter, right, click once, and then I offset that polyline 1 increment, okay, and I tried to do the same thing with my fillet. Let's see, click, it won't allow me. Okay, so there is one sort of restriction to this, and that is if you're trying to fillet these two to get kind of that rounded edge, right? This looks like the perfect parking island. You think, when would I ever use that, right? Perfect parking island right there. If you're ever drawing furniture, right, for your blocks, there's a good chair arm right there, right? You actually do find quite a few reasons to use this. But with polylines, for whatever reason, you can't do that. But with lines you can, right? So I think we figured out that you can explode those even though they're not connected, and then you can use the fillet command on them, right? But the original polylines won't work. So that's really kind of the only restriction on polylines. Any questions on polylines or pedit or exploding? Right? Good. Okay. Well, let's talk about, I want to talk about templates, and then I want to talk about LT scale. All right. And I'm going to pop over to, just going to go to a blank drawing here. Okay. And I'm going to draw some lines. I'm going to come up here to my layer properties, or actually here, and I'm going to take some of these layers. Nope, not those, sorry. Oh, I just revealed my secret right there. I'm going to open up another new drawing. Not that one. Let's see. I want to go to this blank one. There we go. All right. So I'm in a blank drawing here, and I'm going to change my units to architectural. And I'm going to draw several lines. But before I do that, I'm going to create some layers. So 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. And I'm not really generating them to print them. Well, I kind of am. I guess I'll just be good about it. There's line type number 1. Here's line type number 2. Layer, here we go. And then we'll do a gray one. There we go. Okay. So I have my layers. They're layered 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to change a couple of the line types here. So instead of being continuous, I'm going to load a line type, and I'm going to change this to hidden. Okay. And I'm going to load another line type. We're going to go to dashed. Dashed. We'll do that one. Okay. And I'm going to load one more. What's a good one? We'll do dash dot. There we go. So I have these 3 line types loaded, and I'm going to assign 3 of my layers those line types. So we'll do this layer number 1 dash dot, and we will give our layer number 2 dashed, and we will give our layer number 3, we'll do hidden. There we go, and we'll leave our number 4 continuous. So I'm going to make layer number 1 current, and I'm going to draw a line. Okay, looks wonderful. And then I'm going to grab that layer and copy it, CO, copy. And I'm going to grab that one, and I'm going to change that layer to layer 2. Okay, and I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to CO, copy. Do you see what I did there? I snapped to this line, and I perpendicular to that one to get the same measurement between the two, right? And I'm going to change that to layer 3. And I'm going to do a 4th layer, CO. I'm going to change that one to layer 4. So I have 4 different layers here. They all have different line weights, although these two look pretty similar, right? And I want to print these. Okay, so I'm going to Control P. Now this, like when I try to recreate this error, it never works. Let me change, yeah, okay. So I'm going to print these and just take a look at them. So I'm going to go to Adobe PDF, change my pens to LaserJet, make sure I don't forget that. Letter, window, okay. And I'm going to uncheck that, and I'm going to change the scale to, we want to scale these at 1/4 of an inch. And yeah, that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to preview these. Ooh, they're kind of tiny, and they're not dashed anymore, right? They're just these little line segments. I don't really like that very much. So I'm going to change the scale of this from 1/4 to 1/2. We'll preview that. They got a little bigger. Oop, did you see that? I almost saw a little bit of a dash happen right there. And I'm going to change now the scale from 1/2 to 1.5 inches is equal to 1 foot. Okay, I'm starting to get a little bit happening. Let's change this to 1 inch is equal to 1 foot. Preview that. Okay, better. Still the scale is not working, but better. I'm actually seeing dashes, you know, what I would expect. We'll go to 3 inches is equal to 1 foot. Preview that. This is probably the best we've seen so far, and it fits on the page, right? We'll do the one in between that I skipped. 6 inches is equal to 1 foot. Pretty darn good, right? What I'm trying to show you here is that at different scales, our dashes or our line weights that are not continuous, sometimes we have trouble with the dashing showing up, okay? And inherently, it has to do with the fact that it's really just a scale issue in AutoCAD, honestly. The fact that at, you know, 1/2 inch is equal to 1 foot, those lines are going to be really tiny on a page, which means they're going to be squished down, right? And the line pen weights are going to bleed together, and you're not going to be able to see those distinguished dashes, right? And as we take the scale up and we move it to like, you know, 1.5 inches is equal to a foot, those lines are bigger on the page, they're more spread out, which allows that pattern to read better, right? And so with regard to scale, depending on how compressed or tiny or how big and spacious those lines end up being on your page, you may not be able to read your line types, okay? This is probably, I would say, no, well, it might be up in the top 10. We'll say it's up in the top 10 of things I really don't like about AutoCAD. And it's not that I don't like it, it's just that it never functions the way you want it to, right? The problem we're having here, it has to do with scale, it's connected to scale, and it's what's called LT scale, so line type scale, all right? And the way that we are going to remedy this is we're going to input a value for LT scale. And it's going to change because you're going to print drawings at different scales, right? You may print one view at 1/2 inches equal to a foot, another view at 1/4, another view at 1/8, right? So
if we have to stretch this to 3 inches a foot, the rest of my drawings are at 1/8 is a foot. This is not.
It's not going to work. Yeah, and it gets so this is a simplified way of going about it till we get to paper space, right? So there will be another adjustment for paper space, but as it is right now, it's just the system's not going to function the way you want it to, right? And so what we have to do is we have to input this value for LT scale, which helps it mitigates the problem by adjusting model space to make these read, essentially. Yep.
What's the difference between LT scale and annotation scale?
Annotation scale helps. So there's a lot to do with annotation scale, but annotation scale basically allows your drawings to size themselves to scale. It scales your drawings automatically. That's what annotation scale does. So it's a completely different topic than LT scale. LT scale is a setting that you input, and it's kind of a temporary setting that you apply to model space to help adjust the line type scaling so it reads dashed all the time. And annotation scale has to do with keynotes and dimensions and text and sizing to meet the needs of the scale of whatever drawing they're attached to. That's later on, much later on. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you how to input the LT scale, okay? And I'm going to give you the general conventions, and I'm going to show you that it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work. And I'm going to show you how to problem solve or troubleshoot through the process to make it actually work, okay? So LT scale has to do with scale, the setting. And if we go to our very last page of this book, I believe it's, or the third from the last. No, it's the last. Okay, let's zoom in here a little bit. We have a scale factor here, and we can see that for a scale, if you're printing your drawings at a 1/2 inch scale, the scale factor for that is 24. All right, where that comes from, let me show you where that comes from. Where that scale factor comes from is just really simple algebra. So if 1/2 of an inch is equal to 1 foot, 1/2 of an inch is equal to 12 inches, right? Just converting the units so they're similar. And if you cross multiply these two, you get 24, right? The units cancel out. That's how you figure out your scale factor. Simple as that. So when you look at this, okay, 1/4 of an inch is equal to 48. So 4 times 12 is 48. 12 times 8 is 96. That's how we're getting our scale factor, okay? And the general convention for LT scale is that when you're printing your drawing, your LT scale should be set to 1/2 your scale factor. It's kind of where you're going to start with this, okay? And again, like I said, it doesn't always function the way we want it to. And I'll show you how to troubleshoot through that, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type LT scale, enter. LT scale, it says enter a new line type scale factor. All right, well, let's say I want to print these out at 1/2 of an inch is equal to a foot. Okay, so I'm going to type in 24, or sorry, 12. because the scale factor for half of an inch is equal to a foot is 24. Half of that is 12. Did you see what happened? Right? Okay. Sorry, I need to undo something because I did some. There we go. Okay. LT scale. So I'm going to type 12, enter. And the scale factor of half of an inch is equal to a foot is 24. Divide that into 2 is 12. So you saw what happened. It spaced those lines out, and that makes sense because when I showed you that first print preview, I'm going to cheat and show you something. Previous plot. Oh, look at that. Best thing ever, right? Do you remember how those lines were all kind of garbled at the bottom and they were not dashed at all? Let me do my window again. I'm going to make sure we have the same plot area. Okay, so it takes those lines and it scales them, right? The line type scales. Let me change this to, let's say we want to print this at 1/4 of an inch is equal to a foot. The scale factor for that is 48. So our LT scale will be 24. And it changes, right? So now I print previous plot. I'm going to preview this, and it does the same thing, right? This one, because the line type ends up going off the page, we're not seeing it as well, right? But we are getting those dashes that are appropriate for whatever scale we're using, okay? Now, if this doesn't work, all right, the way that I troubleshoot through LT scale, and I'm going to tell you all, you'll have some trouble with it. It'll just happen. The way that I troubleshoot through LT scale is I start with a general convention. Okay, half the scale factor, right? And if that doesn't work, I half the scale factor again. So it's 1/4 of the scale factor, right? So if I am printing these at 1/2 inch is equal to a foot, that'll be a scale factor of 24. If I take that in half, it's a scale of 12, LT scale of 12. Didn't work, great. Then I take it to 6, that didn't work. I take it to 3, that didn't work. I take it down to 1, okay? So that's kind of me troubleshooting through LT scale. And I hate to say that we have to do that, but it's just kind of, it'll happen. Let me just say that, it will happen, okay? So if I take this down to 1, we get a lot of, really tight dashes. And I'm just going to kind of leave it at that for now. And as you're drawing over the next few weeks, just know you will have trouble with LT scale. And the way that I troubleshoot through it is just to do the same convention, start where I start, and then to half that, okay? The reason we're doing LT scale today is because next week we're going to get into drawing site plans, right? And site plans have continuous lines for the property boundary, maybe. They have a dash dot for property lines, right? There's dash lines and hidden lines for easements and setbacks and different things like that, right? So we're going to be using different line types in our drawings for a little while, and you want those line types to read regardless of what scale you print them at, right? So we're going to have to think about LT scale before we print, essentially. Any questions about LT scale? Trust me, there will be there will be plenty in the near future. Yep.
You just add this at the end, like after you finish your drawing, you're just like LT scale.
Yeah, and I think that's a great comment because a lot of students are like, it doesn't look quite right. What do I do? So they start messing around with LT scale, right? But I think it's more important to kind of just get everything drawn. And then when you're ready to print, figure out your LT scale. Okay. Yep, exactly. All right. So one more topic for today. And that is drawing templates. Drawing templates. Let's see. Let me actually open up the assignment that you're going to have. And your drawing assignment for this week is not really a drawing assignment. It's going to be to generate a template file. Oop. Oh, okay, there we go. Let me just say this. We don't know a whole lot about AutoCAD yet, but we're getting to know a few things. And over the course of the next few weeks, we'll start to learn a lot more, okay? And a template file is going to start including a lot of these things that we're going to learn over the next few weeks, okay? And what a template file does, this template assignment, this is going to be kind of our first attempt to create a template file. And what a template file will help you do is it will help you to have a drawing file that contains specific information that you put into it that will help you start your drawing assignments, essentially, right? So if you think about it, if you were to start a drawing assignment today, right, here's what you'd have to do, okay? I'd say, hey, here's your homework. You're going to draw a floor plan. Make sure you put layers in there. Make sure it's printed, blah, 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 right? And what you would likely do is you would go to your Start tab, and you'd click on Start Drawing. Okay. Now this is great. It's a blank drawing. There's nothing in there, right? It kind of has integrity as far as drawing files go, right? There's not a virus attached to it. There's no drawing garbage in there, right? But it's blank, right? So when you open this file to draw your assignment, before you even start your assignment, you're going to have to add layers, right? You're going to have to maybe make sure your printers are installed, make sure your drawing is set up to print, right? You're going to have to make sure your units are set. That's a big one for everybody, right? Are my units set? And that's, I mean, kind of really that's all we have right now. So, but we'll get more, right? There will be, hey, are my dimension styles in here? Are my text styles in here? Is my title block in here? Are my standard blocks in here, right? Because your drawings are going to get more complicated, and they're going to need dimensions, and they're going to need text, and they're going to need blocks in them. And they're going to need, you know, all of the layers, right, to properly be associated. Yep.
So primarily, when you start, you're staying away from decimal from here on out, right? It's mostly architectural.
It just really depends on your assignment. So if you're drawing site plans, we're going to be using surveyor units, right, which you start in decimal. Yeah. But that's another good point. Yeah. Do we have to determine what we're going to be drawing mostly in, I guess, is maybe, you know, what you have to figure out. But a template file is essentially serves as kind of that base file that you open. That it doesn't have any drawing in it, but it has all the settings in it that you need to start drawing an assignment, right? So when you go to work for an office, right, they'll have a template file for you. And whenever you start a new project, you'll open the template file, you'll save it, right? And it will have everything in there to start your task. So it'll have layers, all the layers already created. It will have the colors associated with the layers. It will have dimension styles and text styles and title blocks. It'll have all your print settings in there. It'll have inherent blocks that are useful. So it will have everything in there so that you don't have to spend an hour and a half creating layers and adding dimensions, right? You can just get right to task and you can start drawing, right? So that's what I want to get you started on today, is starting a template file for yourselves. And this template file will at first be fairly simple, but over the course of the semester, you'll continue adding information to it so that by the end, right, if you needed to draw something, you would just open it and would have everything in it to start the task, okay? And it doesn't sound critical. You're like, it's not a big deal. I just have a few layers to create, right? But I'll tell you, when you just need to get something done, you don't want to have to generate all of the other stuff. You just want to get your assignment done, right? So this is going to be really helpful for you. All right, so for your assignment, we're going to keep it fairly simple. And this assignment will essentially be you're going to open up a blank drawing. You are going to set your units to architecture. You're going to set your precision to 1/32 of an inch. Your angle precision to 0.0. You're going to turn your UCS icon off, and it shows you how to do that. This is a personal preference, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense just yet, but it will. You're going to create a few different layers, right? And I'm going to have you, for the next, not this assignment, but the next few, I'll have you add layers to this and add other things. But you're going to create a layer called assignment layer, a anno text, a anno title block, temp layer, and you're going to freeze layer 0. You're going to load the hidden, border, dashed, and divided line types. You're going to assign the hidden line type to the temp layer. You're going to assign the borderline type to the A anode title block layer. And do not assign dashed or divide to any specific layer just yet. You're also going to go in and turn the grid off, and you're going to save this as a template file. Okay, so this is just an exercise in doing a few things, and then the main intent is, for now, creating the template file, all right, which is the most important thing about this assignment. So when you submit this assignment, if it's not in a DWT format, you'll get points taken off, right? Because I'm looking for that template file, right? So let me show you, I'm not going to do all of this, but let me show you a little bit of how that looks, okay? I'm going to close out of a few things. And let me just show you, this will be pretty useful, right? Wouldn't it be nice if you could just open up a drawing and, hey, look, I don't have to create all the layers. They're all there. There's the electrical, plumbing, walls, windows. Wouldn't it be nice if they were just there and they all had a color associated with them, right? And the no print layer was already set to no print. And you know, you may not know a whole lot about this just yet, but wouldn't it be nice if when I went to paper space, oh my gosh, look, there's already a title block there. I don't have to worry about it, right? And my page is set up to plot the right size. I don't have to worry about that either, you know? This is going to be very helpful for everyone. I'm going to close these out. Okay, so let me just, I'm going to remind you how to create a template file, okay? So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to just start a blank file. So whether you click on this or you drop down, do you see templates, right? And you choose ACAD DWT. That's the standard AutoCAD template file. I'm going to open up a blank drawing. And some of the things were to, hey, turn this grid off. Okay, well, I'm going to turn the grid off. Great. This UCS icon right here, I'm going to turn that off. I think he shows you a different way to do it. Yeah, okay, sorry. I was going to do something different. View, UCS icon, turn that off. Doesn't seem like a bother, but it gets in the way of a lot of things. All right, well, then I'm going to go over to Home, and I'm going to click on Layer Properties, and I'm going to create a few layers. A-wall. And let me say this. You want to do the minimum assignment, but hey, guess what? You'll be using this in the future for drawing assignments, and to be honest, it would benefit you to put a little information in right now so you can use it, right? So I'm going to type in A-wall, and I'm going to click on my color, and I'm going to know it's red, and hit OK. Oops. And I'm going to create a few more, right? If you want to create a bunch of these, I think it's great. So A-door, and I'm going to create another layer. And then you'll have the actual, you know, layers in the assignment that you need to generate. A-glazing. There we go. Okay. And we're going to load some line types just so when we're ready to use them, we don't have to browse out and find them. Load. And we'll go to dashed. Oops, did I already do dashed? I did, I forgot. And we'll go to dot. You know, you'll load your line types. Okay, looks pretty good. I'm going to make sure I'm in architectural format for this one, and if I need to use decimal, you know, it depends really on what discipline you're in. Like, well, this class will have specific things we'll do, but if you're an architect, then you're likely going to use architectural units, right? If you are construction management, architectural units. If you are civil engineering, right, decimal, or most engineering will be decimal format, right? So you just kind of think about your discipline and create your template according to that. I'm going to go type in units, enter, and we have to change our precision. If you're ever drawing in AutoCAD and you go to draw a line at a small increment, like I'm going to draw a line that's 1/64th of an increment, 1/64th of an inch, and you go back and you measure it and it's 1/32nd of an inch, not 1/64th, it's because your precision is only set to go as small as 1/32nd, right? So if you're somebody who's doing like millwork detailing or, you know, manufacturing where you have tiny little bits of things that need to be created, your precision would have to be, what is that? It'd have to be higher, right? Higher precision, I guess, which is a smaller increment, so that you can get those tiny little dimensions, right? But if you're doing architectural drawings maybe, and you're like, we don't really ever go, smaller than the 16th, then that might be appropriate for you, okay? But that's what the precision will do. We'll change that to 0, 0. And I think I've captured most of it. You'll have a few more layers to use. But kind of the key to this assignment is actually saving it as a template file, right? That's kind of the big deal. So to create a template file, I'm going to come up to File, Save As. And instead of this being a DWG file, we're going to change the format here to DWT, Drawing Template. Now, where all of these templates are saved, right, the browser changes. So did you notice, look, hey, there's ACAD DWT. All of these files are the ones that are seen on that splash page where it says templates and you drop it down, right? So the idea is that if you created your own template file in your AutoCAD at home on your computer and you wanted to use it in your drawings, the idea is that I could say, let's cheat this and say 1 Shelly. I'll save it as that. Save. Okay. Doesn't look like a whole lot happened, right? But now I'm going to close out of that. You see it says 1 Shelly DWT. I'm going to close out. The nice thing about this now is when I drop down, there's my template, right? So it is saved in your interface so that when you want to use it, it's always there, right? And if I want to make a change, I can go to DWT. Let's say I want to add a couple more layers. Furniture. I'll make that a gray layer, hit OK. And then I'm just going to File, Save As, DWT again, save over the top of it, save, yes, okay. Now, the idea behind a template file isn't that you come in here and start drawing things, right? And then save over the top with drawing geometry in here. The idea is that you make system changes, right? You add layers, you add dimension styles, text styles, title blocks, things like that you'll use in every single drawing assignment. And then you save it over the top of the template before to update it, right? Not that you open this and then draw in it and then save over the top of the template with geometry in there, right? Kind of dirties it all up, right? You don't want to do that. So I'm going to close out of that, right? Yep. Oh, no question back there. Okay, I thought you had a question back there. Now when I go to use this, Shelly, okay, I open it up and it converts that template file immediately to a DWG. Okay, so it says, hey, I recognize you're going to use this information to draw, and we already know you're going to save it in drawing format, so we'll convert it for you. Okay, Revit's a little different, right? Yes?
Why do you not, even though the grid doesn't print, I mean, obviously because you're in model space, why do you not like having the grid on?
So distracting. Sky, it burns my eyes. I'm kidding. It's just personal preference. Honestly, I really don't like having it. And I don't like having it because I feel like it just interferes with things for me. Personal preference. I don't usually draw and reference the grid, right? I don't use it as a scale factor. I draw and I input a specific distance, and whether or not I can tell that specific distance by the grid doesn't matter to me. So I just don't use it. Yeah, but if you like it, it's great. Yes. I always joke because we had a professor when I was in school, and you know, we're all very graphic people, visual people. So when we would do big presentations, everybody put graphics on their boards and like background images, and he would just say, that collage in the background is hurting my eyes. You're like, oh, okay, I could see that coming, right? The collage. It's kind of funny. Okay. Any questions on templates? So periodically through the semester, as we learn a new skill, I'll say, you know, it would be really great to update your template with this information. And then that way, when you need to use it again, it will be in there and you don't have to regenerate it, right? Which you will continually have to do if you don't add it to your template. But it makes a lot of sense. It's really easy. You open the template, you make the changes, you save over the top, right? Super simple. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll post that assignment. So we're going to have this assignment, the template assignment, So I will post that. And then next week we will get into site plans, right? So all of you civil we have civil engineers in here, don't we? We don't have any civil engineers in here? Oh, maybe. Okay.
Surveying.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, we had at least one.
I thought we did too.
Maybe it's all millions. Just kidding, not millions, but like there's a bunch of people that aren't here.
Yeah. Secretly viewing the online videos instead of coming to class. Yeah, I thought we did too. Well, regardless, right? Whether you're, whatever discipline you're in, you're going to be using site plans, right? Whether it's reference for, you know, if you're a surveyor, whether it's, hey, you're an architect and you are designing something, but you need to see how it interacts with the site, or you're a civil engineer, or, you know, even if you're doing shop drawings for something, right, that have to do with the site, you're going to be interacting with sites. So you may not be drawing them a lot, but you need to know how to interact with them, which is just really important. So we'll be talking about that as well. All right. I'm going to stop our